So I said earlier, like I think I've evolved just a lot as a music teacher, and I now see that kind of traditional where like technical proficiency is how we define who's excellent. I now see that as a really limiting and kind of destructive thing for our field. My current philosophy is that all humans are just automatically musicians. So just like language learning, our brains are wired for music. We all have the past capacity to grow as musicians. So I now teach in a very student-centered, culturally responsive way where student voice, choice, creativity is at the center of what I do.
Welcome to Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creators. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. We are so glad to be with you today. Kathryn, today's guest was fun because I feel like I've seen a couple of different articles that he's written online, and then to actually get to meet him and talk through some of these ideas of student-centeredness was really, really neat. What did you think of David?
I mean, it's great to talk to another person who loves general music as much as I do. And it was just really great to hear all of the things that are happening in this class. Like, what a fun place to be.
Oh, I know. There's so many things, and I don't have the general music experience you do. So to hear him describe it was just really neat for me to think about, like, what that can look like with young kids. But then he also, he mentioned things with older students and thinking about band as well, which is, more obviously where my brain goes. But it was just very, very fun to hear. And I appreciated how he also shared kind of his journey, how he got there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that a lot of us don't come out of college thinking this way, thinking about music education, a bit disruptively. But he kind of shared what that progression looked like for him.
Yeah. And I think it's relatable. Many of us are kind of getting there, right? Where it's like, am I going to double down on what I know, or am I going to try something different?
Right.
And so, yeah, I went through it. You went through it. So many of us are going
Mm-hmm.
through that of how do we kind of
Yeah.
find a new path?
Right. And if nothing else, I think David and you and I think this way too. Like, we're giving other people permission to try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember thinking that when I first started. I'm like, but am I allowed to do things different? Is it okay? Like, yes, we are all here to tell you it is okay to take a risk and try something. And even if it doesn't look like what, this idea of what we think music education needs to look like, if you're listening to your kids, that's where we should be going.
Mhm.
Before we get to today's interview, if you're ready to make powerful shifts towards student-centered teaching, explore the Pass the Baton Coffee Club. Members get an exclusive deeper dive audio extra and a Reflect and Act PDF download after every episode, plus access to our full resource library.
For more personal support, our premium tier offers direct access to Kathryn and Theresa in a private Voxer group. Visit buymeacoffee.com/passthebaton to learn more and join.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We have another awesome guest with us today. We're really excited to be talking to David Davis. David, welcome. Well, glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so honored that you reached out to me. I've seen on your podcast you've had some really significant movers and shakers on here, so I feel really honored to be part of this conversation.
Oh, of course. We've been seeing your work online. We're like, yep, this is somebody we need to talk to. We need to get to know him.
Yeah, so maybe even speaking about that, could you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us more about your background in music education?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my name's David Davis. Um, I identify as a band and orchestra and general music teacher, and a innovative like curriculum developer, designer is kind of something I've been doing the last couple of years. So I'm currently teaching in St. Louis Park, which is a first ring suburb just west of Minneapolis. And I also see myself as a lifelong learner. And I think I identify with that because I've seen how much I've evolved throughout my career.
Mhm.
So I started, well, I grew up as like a traditional band kid. I chose the saxophone in fifth grade, started with method books right away, Found most of the music fun and easy. Saw myself reflected in the teachers I had and the repertoire we were playing. Started winning competitions. So like being a musician kind of became my identity, like that thing I was good at. So of course I wanted to go to college for that. And at the time, I actually had no desire to be a music teacher until I took a pedagogy course. My saxophone professor really strongly encouraged me to take it, and that one course just like blew my mind because I learned about the science of teaching, like pedagogy. I think before that, I just naively thought like it was intuitive, and some people were just good at teaching. But he was like, no, 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 there's actually a science to it, like scaffolding and simplification, and he demystified it for me, and that just made me fall in love with teaching. Um, so I got licensed and then started as just a traditional band teacher. Things like method books and the standard repertoire
Mhm.
and kind of the one right way to play each instrument. So yeah, I started as band. I taught in Wisconsin, Virginia, Minnesota. Started my career in like high school, then did some middle school, then worked my way down to elementary. And I would say now, like more than a decade later, I barely recognize that teacher. So I said earlier, like I think I've evolved just a lot as a music teacher, and I now see that kind of traditional, where like technical proficiency is how we define who's excellent. I now see that as a really limiting and kind of destructive thing for our field, which maybe we can go into more into that later. But
Mhm.
my current philosophy is that all humans are just automatically musicians. So just like language learning, our brains are wired for music. We all have the past capacity to grow as musicians. There's no such thing as tone deaf. So I now teach in a very student-centered, culturally responsive way where student voice, choice, creativity is at the center of what I do.
I resonate with all of that because I
Yeah.
feel like it was a very similar path. I mean, some differences along the way, but my first couple years teaching band, I taught band exactly how I was taught band and the way that I thought you taught band. And now I almost can't imagine doing it that way because if I were to try to do that now, it would not feel authentic. So,
Yeah, I'm at a point in my career where I'm trying to build like a movement and coalition and allies of other change makers.
mhm,
And pretty much every person I talk to, especially band people,
mm,
we all have that very similar thread of like, yeah, we started our careers teaching how we were taught and how we thought
mhm,
band should teach. And then we kind of noticed something about it didn't feel right. And I feel like then you're at a fork in the road. You can either double down and be like, nope, this is how band goes. Or if you're a change maker, you're like, maybe I should try it a different way. And when I did that, it made me so excited about how engaged the students were. And I was like, yep, I think that's the right path. Do it different.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, that's pretty cool. So, you're kind of, I guess my question is, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. You're talking about that change. Was there like a moment? What was the thing that made you want to reimagine and made you feel like? Because I can kind of remember what it was for me. I'm curious what it was for you to go from this traditional, like either band with a capital B or just even music in that way, to being more student centered.
Yeah, I definitely had a few checkpoints along my
Hmm.
career, but I can start with the first big one.
Yeah.
It's back when I taught out in Fairfax County outside Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I was at a school that was a Title I school, and the majority of students were students of color. So when I tried the tr quote unquote traditional, which tends to be coded for white centered as well.
Hmm.
When I tried that approach of method books, I could tell right away that they were uninspired, disengaged. They didn't really care about the page
Hmm.
by page method book approach. So again, that fork in the road, I could have doubled down and been like, well, this is just how band is. This is what you have to do. Um, but luckily, I chose a different option of just asking the kids, well, hey, like, what do you care about? What do you want to learn?
Hmm.
Um, and they suggested things like, we want to like drum, we want to play drums more, and we want to like try making our own music. And I was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. Um, so I went out and got some buckets from a nearby hardware store, started doing bucket drumming. Saw right away that they loved that. I was like, okay, there's something there. I can use that. And then at this particular school, they had like a morning news show where like the older kids would talk about the weather for the day and any events. And I thought like that was so cool. I never seen that before. But I noticed there was no music. I was like that,
Hmm.
most news shows have some kind of news jingle or something. So I went back to my band and I said, what if we create like a band jingle for your news show? And they're like, yeah, okay, sure. So we composed like just like 10 seconds of music. And it took a few, when you see band only once a week, it took a couple months to
Yeah.
get at a good enough level where we could record it. But we recorded it and put it on their news show. And it just so happened that one of my colleagues at that school knew a news anchor at NBC4 News Washington.
Mhm.
So when she heard about this project, she's like, oh, we gotta bring my friend in, the anchor. So they actually did an NBC News, like the end of the hour feel good story
Mhm.
was
Mm.
about how my students composed and performed this jingle for their news show and just how excited they were. So that whole experience really showed me like the power of student voice, choice, creativity, that it's okay. Like the band Boogeyman's not going to come get you if you don't do method books.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just I was so excited. I was like, okay, I got to keep going down this path and see what else I can do to inspire intrinsic motivation and student engagement.
Yeah. That's awesome. So it sounds like the big thing, and we've heard this from other guests too. You're listening to your students,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, treating students as co-teachers is
Mhm.
definitely a philosophy I've come to believe in.
Yeah, that's really pretty neat. Um, and I think, for me, when I'm thinking back, I remember just being in a situation that didn't fit the typical band and saying like, this is not working. What do I do? And I feel like, again, we've heard that from a lot of people, but it's sometimes it's like we need permission to step away from the way things have always been done. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder where that comes from. Like, I feel like sometimes we're almost holding ourselves back because I think it's because the tradition of how music education's been taught has been the same way for so many decades.
Yeah.
That it feels scary to try it other ways, or
Mhm.
that we like attach our identity to like I don't for me that was definitely part of it. It's like, no, I'm a
Yes.
band person, like this is what band means. But then I saw my kids just weren't engaged in that. So it was like really scary to like, well, what if I do it differently? Like all my colleagues are gonna think I'm a horrible band teacher. Um, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of fear wrapped up in that too.
Yeah. Very cool.
So, I mean, you walked us a little bit through some ideas with band, and how to kind of catch their interest and take them where they're from, and then take them somewhere musically in your room. Um, can you walk through some more projects or lessons, maybe even elementary this time, of like how that student centeredness appears in your room?
Yeah, I'd love to. Like I said earlier, I see myself as an innovative curriculum designer, so I have a ton of projects I could talk about.
Yes.
But I'll talk about the one that comes to mind first, because I get really excited about it, and I think my students have loved it every year I've done it. I call it Kinder Connect. So I do it with my kindergartners. And I just feel like it's really student centered. It's culturally rich. Um, they find it really fun and joyful.
Yeah.
And it's still rooted in like musical fundamentals. And all the students get to be co-teachers with me, so it also sends the message to the youngest learners that, like, no, you're a co-teacher too. Like, I say very explicitly, you're teaching me too. Like, I never knew that, and they just like be like, whoa, wow, Senor Davis didn't know that, and they call me Senor Davis because I work at a Spanish immersion school. So, um, okay, so it takes some front load planning, but then it can kind of go on autopilot for a couple months. So I start by reaching out to every kindergartner's family, saying, "Hey, can you just send me a song that your child finds meaningful from your home or your culture?" It could be anything from a made-up song that you've made up with your family to a favorite TV theme to a favorite rock song to a religious song to a holiday song, like just really anything your child finds meaningful. So I have about 100 kindergartners at my school, so I get about 100 songs. And then this is where the front work comes in. I take every song and make like a little 10-minute mini lesson on that song. And that's where like the music fundamentals and the culture and like what's unique about this song that we can teach in kindergarten. And then we randomize the order, and when it's a student's turn, they get to come up and be the co-teacher with me.
Mm.
So that student and I are co-teaching their song. And especially if it's a song I'm not familiar with, the workload goes a little bit more skewed on the kindergartner, but I'm obviously there to help out. Um, yeah, so like I said before, like I'm purposely saying like, okay, let's have the next musician come up. Let's have the next teacher come up. At the end, like, oh, thank you for teaching me. Like just using that
Mhm.
intentional language of like, you're a teacher, you're a musician, you're helping teach the whole class. So I've had like a Portuguese lullaby, a Slovakian pop musician named Miro Jarosz, who I'd never heard of before. Um, I had a student with speech apraxia, where he struggles to use his muscles to say certain words, but his song was "Bananas in Pajamas" because his first word that he could say was banana. So that was his really meaningful songs. We did a little mini lesson on bananas in pajamas, and he was so excited. Um, I had a mother bring in her accordion once, and all the kindergartners got to try the accordion because that's
Oh.
from their culture. And one of my favorites, there was a kindergartner whose great grandfather grew up in St. Louis Park, which is where I teach. And he played in a local jazz band like 80 years ago. And his favorite song was You Are My Sunshine, and he would play that in their local jazz band.
Mm.
And that song's been passed down generation to generation. So the
Mm.
song she chose was You Are My Sunshine. And
Mhm.
their family sent me like black and white pictures of her great grandfather playing it. And she was just so excited to be like, yeah, that's my great grandfather. He's from St. Louis Park. And um,
Oh.
so I just feel like this, even though it takes a little bit of front end work,
Mm.
planning all those mini lessons, the payoff is just so exciting. Like the kids are so engaged, they light up when it's their turn, and it's inherently like culturally diverse because when you have 100 students, there's 100 different songs that they choose, and you get the Taylor Swifts and the Led Zeppelins in there too, and the Bluey theme, and of course, when I do it this year, I'm sure half the kids are going to choose Golden or Soda Pop from K-pop Demon Hunters. Um, but still, I just it's one of my favorite projects that I do.
Yeah. Wow. That just sounds so neat. I am primarily someone who has taught upper elementary, junior high, high school, things like that. So I'm always amazed when I hear about the things that you can do with the littles. And I know, Kathryn, you're always so passionate about that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that this is another kindergarten example because it is. So many people say, like, oh, but they can't. Oh, they can. They really can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then when I talk to like my administrator or other music teachers about it, like the standards of perform, respond, create,
Yeah.
connect, like it hits all of them, and I think it really hits connect, which is why I call it
Mm-hmm.
Kinder Connect. Because
Mm.
I sometimes talk with music educators who are like, well, how do you really do that connect one? And I was like, well, here, let me tell you an example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And again, it's you're listening to the students. In this opportunity, you're it sounds like having that parent really helps, right? Because you're able to get a lot more information by connecting with the parents, but ultimately it's hearing from the students. That's awesome.
Right, yeah, the family is involved. Every once in a while, I don't hear back from family, and then I just go right to the student and like, what
Of
song do you
course.
want? So every student is included,
Of course.
but when you can engage the family, yeah, you get some really deep history and knowledge.
Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just think about because you're again you teach in elementary, so I imagine is it kindergarten through fifth grade?
Correct,
So
yeah.
you're now making a relationship with the families in kindergarten that can potentially sustain you for the next 6 years. That's
Yes. Yep. And then I do other projects in later grades where the
mm-hmm.
kids also get to choose songs. And it's really interesting to see like when they're second graders, like, oh, I want to pick the same song I did in kindergarten. Or like, no, no, I don't like that song anymore. Now I like this, like how their taste kind of changed. I was like, okay,
Yeah. Oh, that's really neat. Really neat. So I'm going to go back to some of the things that I've read that you've written, and in some of those articles, you talked about things like musical conversations or composition through play. Creativity is something that we are really into, and getting students to create their own music. Can you talk more about what this is and how does that help students take ownership?
Yeah, I mean, so when I think of creativity, like in my classroom, they're literally making original music. So I think that sense of ownership and pride that you just talked about kind of happens naturally when they create
Yeah.
original music. Um, my belief is that in order for students to grow in the skill of creativity, they need to be the ones making choices. I don't think creativity is just following someone else's directions. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
re-creativity.
Yes.
Um, I know I was just listening to one of your past podcasts, Steve Giddings,
Oh
who
yeah.
I've met before, and he's all about creativity. I think he said something similar, like original creativity is not the same as recreativity. That like
Mm-hmm.
recreativity is more about compliance and following rules.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are two different skill sets. Um, so yeah, like following dynamics or just playing accurate notes, I don't necessarily see that as creativity. I see that as technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember I read a book uh, by someone in Illinois, actually, where she made the metaphor that like the way we tend to teach music would be kind of like paint by numbers,
Mhm.
where if you just follow the directions, like you can create art that looks pretty, but were you actually being creative?
Yeah.
Whereas in the visual arts, if you make your own painting, like that's creative. Like so, there's a difference between creativity and technical skills in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Um, and then I can share another project example of
Please.
how another project I'm really proud of where we center composition and creativity if we have time.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Um, so it's called Elders Wisdom Children's Song. It was a project actually started by a community member in my district, and then our district is the first one to put it in our curriculum. Um, and it's all about uplifting someone in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So the students brainstorm who could an elder be, someone respected in our community.
Mm-hmm.
We invite them in, we interview them, they tell us their life story, their words of wisdom. The students have a really great time like coming up with the questions and learning about this person. And then we take the transcript of that interview and we start looking for common themes and like what's maybe the main theme, like what is this person's really big words of wisdom? And those themes start to turn into lyrics. So now
Mm-hmm.
we have verses for all the different themes, and then like a refrain of the main words of wisdom. And then once we kind of have a draft of the lyrics, we listen to genres that the students think would really fit that elder based on the story they told.
Mm-hmm.
And they listen to some like examples of that genre, and then they improvise melodies using so they have their lyrics in front of them. Some of them like to listen to background music, some of them like to do it a cappella, and they literally just make up in a melody, and I record it. It's been really amazing the first year we did this, how lots of students were really scared to do it. But now that it's become more normalized in our school, like half the class is like, oh yeah, I'll improvise, I'll make one up. So I'm so like I did not have that experience when I was a kid, so I'm so
Mm-hmm.
excited as a music teacher to see that like, okay, like I'm normalizing improvising, I'm normalizing
Yeah.
creativity. Um, so we listen to all the melodies. I transcribe them onto piano so that when we vote, kids are voting for the melody they like, not the friend voice
Mm-hmm.
they like. And then the top two melodies become the refrain melody and the verse melody. And then because it's elementary, I add the harmonic structure. But if I was doing this in like middle or high school, I would probably have the students help me with the harmonic structure as well. So ultimately, we have a completely original song created by the students, the lyrics, the verses, the themes, the melodies. Um, and then when we perform, so we practice it for a few weeks, and then when we perform it, we don't even call it a concert. We call it a celebration because the whole point of the event is to invite the elder up on stage. And the students have like little written statements that they write and they say, we love that we learned this about you and this about you and this about you. And we created a song in to honor you.
Mm.
And then they sing the song to the elder to honor them for all the learning that happened. So it's not about like, look at how great our technique skills are. It's more about like, yeah, we're connecting, we're honoring through performance and creativity. So for me, that's just like the epitome of perform, respond, create, connect.
Yeah.
Like I wonder, like, what if that was the heart of music education rather than all these competitions and buying pieces on J.W. Pepper and who can play it the best? And what if
Mm-hmm.
it was about honoring community members and the kids were the ones creating, and me as a teacher, I'm just helping facilitate that creativity.
There's
Mm-hmm.
so much purpose and authenticity in all that.
Yeah, and they're so intrinsically like we talked about ownership before. I don't have to coerce these kids to practice. Like they want to practice it because it's their song.
Hmm.
And what's even cooler is we do this in fourth grade. So then when they're fifth graders, they are so excited to mentor the next year's fourth graders because they loved it. So they're like, can we tell like we know you're going to be nervous, but don't worry, it's so fun. And like we remember when we were
Oh,
nervous too. And like and then they're singing it in the hallways. And then when they, graduate fifth grade, I'll kind of play their song in the background and they start singing along because they still remember it a year later. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really been embedded in our school culture that thought of just creativity through music.
that's what we want.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what we want. And then we want that to continue wherever they end up next, whether they, decide to do band, orchestra, chorus, or whether they decide to just, do music on their own or any of those things. But I feel like without the experiences in elementary school, they're not as likely. Right?
Yeah, well, and the other thing I think about is these kids will grow into adults that either
Yeah.
support music education or don't,
Yep.
depending on how
Yeah.
their experience was.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I said earlier that I saw like kind of the status quo of music education is maybe being destructive to our field. That's kind of what I was
Hmm.
hinting at is if we send the message that only the really technically proficient students are the real musicians and everyone else either implicitly or uh, if I can't think of the words right now, but if we do it on purpose or accidentally send them the
Yeah.
message that they're not musicians and they don't belong, they
Hmm.
can turn into adults that don't support music
Hmm.
education.
Right. Because eventually those adults are going to be on the school board.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And if they had a poor experience or if they were told by that elementary music teacher that their voice wasn't very good or
Yeah.
just pretend like you're singing, that has like I've talked to so many adults that that's happened to them and it has a lasting impact.
Yep.
And I think the teachers that do that, it's because they're functioning under that status quo belief that music education is about technical proficiency and sounding good,
Right.
which again is different than creativity and different than the human relational communication, connecting community things that I'm really trying to uplift. And you can still have performance in that, but it's not all about performance.
Yeah. I think that's the key is how we can make it so it's not only about the performance. Yes, I think the sharing our music is important, but it doesn't have to look, kids on stage, audience out there, silence, applause. Like that doesn't have to be what it looks like.
Hmm. Well, that's so passive too.
Yeah.
I can share really briefly another idea I had back when I was teaching band and orchestra. I call it the iPod concert, because this was beginner orchestra and band. They
Mhm.
all chose songs they wanted, and instead of having the whole large ensemble play it, we had like small groups because like, well, this group wanted to do this song and this group wanted to do this song. So we had maybe 15 to 20 pieces on the concert. And then the program, I made it look like an iPod with all the songs. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, like here's our program. I need someone in the audience to pick what they want first on the playlist. So then the audience was raising their hand, like, oh, I'd like to hear the Star Wars theme next. Okay, let's turn on Star Wars. And then the kids that learned Star Wars played it. And a few of the pieces were for large ensemble,
Mhm.
like Dragon Slayer or whatever.
Yeah.
So when someone in the audience chose that one, ooh, that one's a large ensemble piece. So I felt like it was mixing that idea of student voice and choice with audience participation
Yeah.
and audience not just being passive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so fun. Sorry, I love these podcast interviews because I just get ideas. I start thinking like, "Ooh, how could I incorporate that?" But yeah, that's great, and it's what you just described there wasn't anything huge and monumental. But it was one little shift in thinking, how could I make this a more interactive experience for everybody involved?
Yeah.
You still checked your concert box, but
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. And I think for me, it was also like giving myself permission to try it
yeah,
because
Mm-hmm.
there's still that like band boogeyman in the back of my head of like, well, no, 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 that's not a real concert, right? But I had to
yeah,
well, I'm gonna try it though.
yeah,
Because yeah, there's always the fear of like, well, what if the parents don't like it? What if my principal doesn't like it? Like I knew the kids were gonna like it. They were totally on board, but we sometimes get judged by the outside world based on how good the
yeah,
concert goes. And so I get the fears, but our field is I think shooting ourselves in the foot if we just keep doing the status quo over and over and over and over.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I know also as teachers, we kind of get in our way because we'll say like your fourth grade songwriting, right? Some teachers would be like, okay, but if I'm going to give them this chance to create this thing, um, how much how do I structure it so that they are successful, but then not hinder what their choices are too? Like, do you have offer, what would your suggestion be for that? Like, how much structure slash freedom do you give them when you're doing those projects?
Yeah.
Because that's,
Yeah,
sorry, because that's scary for teachers, right? It's like, what do I do? How much do I give them? So anyway.
yeah, it's definitely scary, and I will share for most of these projects, the first time I did them, it is the most scary. Um, and I'm also okay with like taking data on how it went and adapting it to make it better. Like
Right.
that Elders Wisdom Children's song now, like I said, it's part of our culture. The kids love it. Um, and it looks more effective and efficient than it did the first year.
Yeah.
So I think I wonder if it kind of comes down to really that fear of losing control, and we kind of stop ourselves from being innovative and creative before we even try because of that fear. And I think it's being courageous enough to take that risk, and have the students be part of it with you, not feeling like you need to control everything, which is how we've been trained as like, no, it's the teacher's job, control compliance, kids better follow what you say. And I think I'm sharing that. I see myself more as a coach in these projects rather than we have to create it this way, otherwise it's wrong. So yeah, I think it's I don't have all the answers. It's okay to learn with the students, like alongside them. Like for that fourth grade songwriting project a couple years ago, the students decided the song should be a salsa because the elder had mentioned that he loves salsa dancing and salsa music. And of course, what came up for me was like, I know nothing about salsa. I'm a Midwest white man,
Right.
but I was like, okay, students, like let's listen to examples. Let's see what we like. Oh, here's a certain rhythm, and like, oh, it doesn't use like the same chords as like some other genres. And we figured it out. And some of the students were like, oh, we want to play recorder because the elder mentioned that I think it's called a quena, which is a certain kind of Latin American flute that he plays it as a hobby. And they're like, oh, we want to play recorder so we can sound like his flute playing that he mentioned. And so we were able to put that into the song. And so it's getting over that fear at the beginning and then just adapting as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see that, it sounds like you're really also modeling this idea of lifelong learning, which is huge, right? You don't have all the answers. That's okay. How are we going to learn this together?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I try to show the students my vulnerability that I don't know everything, that it's okay to learn from kindergartners. It's okay to not know I know sometimes, especially the little students, like, well, you know everything about music. And like, no, 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 I do not.
Yeah.
Like there's so much that the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's what we struggle with so much as young teachers, is that we feel like we do have to know everything, and we have to, I mean, I see myself so I'm currently teaching a woodwind methods class. I'm like, you got to know your fingerings, we're just like, you have to know these things. And yes, there are a lot of things that we do have to know as as music educators, but that doesn't mean we have to know everything that's going to happen in the classroom.
Yeah, and it's impossible. We'll never be
No.
musically or pedagogically omnipotent, right? It's not
Right.
even possible. So
Right. Yeah, that's good things to remember. So when we were writing Pass the Baton, one of the things that we did at the end of every chapter was we put in a little things you could try tomorrow. And it was just like a quick, here's something you could do tomorrow related to, whatever the topic of the chapter was. And people seem to like it because, as teachers, we want the actionable. We want the thing that we can just do it. What would you suggest if someone was kind of thinking like, all right, maybe it's time to make some changes? What's that thing they could try tomorrow?
yeah, so I'm trying to think of like the small thing
Right.
because I have a lot of big things I've talked about, but I think the small thing is the surveying the students, um, seeing them as co-teachers, not as like empty books that we have to fill. If you've heard of like Paulo Freire's
Yeah.
theory of like the banking system,
Mm-hmm.
like I think I had to get over that. I had to start realizing like these students, even the youngest ones, come in with inherent brilliance, inherent knowledge of music. So it's actually good for our class learning if I engage them as co-teachers.
Hmm.
Because not only will we inherently have a very culturally rich experience, but I'll learn too.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's my little nugget is survey students, have some like sit down heart to hearts, like, hey, like I'm noticing we're not super engaged lately. Like, what if you were the teacher, what would you do to be really engaging? And like, oh, bucket drumming. Oh, okay, I can try that.
Hmm.
Let me share another story from the
Yeah.
COVID times. Um, so during COVID teaching, I was a virtual teacher. And I got that was actually the first time I got thrown in as a general music teacher because remember back then it was band and orchestra.
Hmm.
So I had these general music teachers. My general music colleague said there wasn't really a curriculum. So I'm like, what do I do? So I did exactly this little nugget. I said, I'm just going to ask the students, like, here we are, third grade general music class. What do you guys want to learn about? And it just so happened that that's when the musical Hamilton was really big. So the majority of that class was like, we love musicals. Can we do something with musicals? I was like, yeah, like that's music related. We could
Yeah.
hit some standards with that. And then I had the idea of like, what do you guys think about making our own musical? And they're like, we could do that. I was like, sure. Like everyone else in the education system isn't sure what's going on. So yeah, let's make a
Why
musical.
not?
Yeah, right. Why not? Yeah.
Hmm.
And I had never done it before, didn't know how it would go. But I also like wanted to be a risk taker, and I could tell the students were super jazzed about it. So these are a group of about 15 9-year-olds. And we just started like, okay, well, what do we need? Like, what are we need some musicians, we need some background art, we need lyrics, we need a storyline, we need some people to be actors. And again, this is all virtual. So this ended up being like a video. And then I'm not a really high-tech video technician, but I used iMovie to do like the video within video. So I could have
Mhm.
like one kid's background art and then I could have another kid's like acting in their living room overlaid over that, and that's how we did our musical. But man, it turned into a 22-minute original musical created by
Whoa.
9-year-olds that
Oh,
in my opinion, is like so creative and so phenomenal. Like it's about a story of a dragon that comes down from space, and he's like the evil dragon. But then there's this other good dragon in the forest, and they end up having a battle. And the main characters ride away on this dragon's back. And of course, it's a musical, so there's like numerous original songs that
Wow.
kids just bravely sang and they were so excited. And
hmm.
there were two boys who I don't know, Kathryn, your experience with third grade boys, but they begged me, can we please make up the song for the dragon battle?
Oh,
Like they wanted to sing.
yeah.
It wasn't me coursing, like, no, like let's sing. They wanted to. So, and like the song they came up with, like boom, 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 crash, bang, boom, is like in the background as these dragons are battling. And it was just, yeah, I can send you the link if you want to watch it.
Yeah.
But that's like for me, that was the payoff for taking that risk of surveying students, taking a risk, learning alongside them.
Hmm.
And then I was just kind of the coach that just took all the pieces they gave me and just glued it together.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why we do it. It's those moments, those payoff moments. But we have to also like reiterate, you were the coach though, right? That you were still there. We're not saying that the teacher doesn't need to be there anymore. Oh, we just put it on. No, you're still there. You're still helping facilitate, but it sounds like you also just you know when to get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what creativity, again, student choices, as
Hmm.
much as possible, I'm trying to let them make choices. And there was one key part of this process where we had like the beginning, the act one and the act two, but they didn't really fit together. And I was, as my adult brain was like, I don't know how to make this make sense for
Yeah.
the parents who are gonna watch this. So I just went to the third grade. I was like, okay, guys, this is what I'm thinking about. Like, we have these two parts. I'm not sure how to connect it. And this one 9-year-old girl was like, "Oh, Mr. Davis, I'll do it. I have an idea." I was like, "Okay." A week later, she comes back with a minute-long monologue that she recorded that totally tied the two parts of the story together. I was just like, "Elizabeth, that is amazing. You like nailed the acting first of all, and then like the storyline totally makes sense." And she's just like, "Yeah, no big deal."
That's awesome.
So
Oh,
cute.
yeah. So see when we just let them be who they are, some really cool things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I had so many parents emailing me like, This is COVID." They're like, "I had no idea my student would be so engaged in virtual music class." And there were kids climbing trees to like drop boxes out of trees because that was part of our story. There's one kid who asked their parent if they could get a smoke bomb in a box because when the box opens and the dragon comes out, they're like, "Oh, we want it to be smoky." So like,
Oh,
I'll ask my dad for help. And so we got a video of like a little smoke bomb going off. And yeah.
That's really cool. That's yeah, very, very, very fun.
yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. We really appreciate the ideas and just thinking, reminding us first of all that we do have permission to do things differently. In fact, at this point, it needs to be something that we're all considering. So that's been really, really big and important. If people wanted to connect with you, learn more about what you're up to, all of that good stuff, what can we tell them?
Yeah, I just recently came out with my own website. It's davismusiced.com.
Awesome.
So DAVISMUSICED.com.
Perfect.
You can also find me on LinkedIn, Davis Music Educator.
Okay. Good. We'll make sure that we put those links in there because yeah, really appreciate your work. And um, we had mentioned earlier you also do some work with NAFME. Is that right?
Yeah, I just recently got appointed to the Council for Innovations. So
Awesome.
I'm the Northern Midwest representative for innovations.
Cool. So we'll
Great.
make sure we keep an eye on what's happening with that group as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if any of your listeners feel like they are change makers, movers and shakers in the music education world, I really want to highlight and uplift those teachers. So please reach out to me. I feel like for so much of my career, I felt like I was in the minority. I think I still am in the minority of like change makers and innovators. So I'm trying to like find our people and bring us
Yeah.
together because
Yep.
it can feel really isolating when you're trying to do something different in the status quo. But there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again. We very much appreciate you sharing all of your wonderful stories.
Yeah, this was such a pleasure. Thanks again for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. If you have found value in our conversation, please hit that like button, subscribe to our podcast, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us grow our community of passionate music teachers.